Term 3, Week 6. For the next couple of weeks, we will be looking at the animal kingdom. This week specifically, we are going to be looking at the classification and characteristics of vertebrates and invertebrates. We will also be looking at the food chain and omnivores, herbivores, and carnivores. Classification and characteristics of vertebrates and invertebrates. When we talk about classification, we mean taking animals and dividing them into groups by looking at specific things that make the animals different. In this case, we are looking at vertebrates. Vertebrates are a group of animals that have a spine or a backbone, and invertebrates. Invertebrates are a group of animals who are without a spine or backbone. In the diagram below, we can see they have separated vertebrates, animal with a spine, from invertebrates, animals without a spine. Animals that make part of the group of vertebrates are mammals, birds, fish, reptiles, and amphibians. Animals who make up the invertebrates are phylum, mollusks, arachnoids, crustaceans, sponges, insects, Scyphosia. Let's talk a little bit about animal groups. Every living thing on Earth, from the smallest flea to the giant blue whale, is an animal. There are animals everywhere, under rocks in the garden, in trees, in the water, and in the air. Animals are divided into two basic groups, so we can study them more easily. These two groups are vertebrates and invertebrates. If you put your hand on the middle of your back and feel where your spine runs from your neck to your lower back, that whole area is called your spine. Mammals, birds, reptiles, amphibians, and fish are all vertebrates. This means they have a skeleton inside their body. Insects, spiders, and snails do not have a backbone. They have a shell that is on the outside of their body that protects them. This is called an exoskeleton. It means a skeleton on the outside of the body. Let's talk a little bit about the habitat. A habitat is a part of nature where animals and plants are found with all the food and shelter they need to survive. A habitat can be as small as a single tree or as large as an entire forest. So a habitat refers to the home of the animal. Let's talk a little bit about mammals. Mammals are warm-blooded, which means that their body temperature always remains the same. Mammals give birth to live young. This means that they do not lay eggs. The young suckled from them from the mammary glands. All mammals have hair. The bumblebee bat is the smallest mammal, only 3 centimeters long. The blue whale is the largest mammal and weighs about 200 tons. The next group we will be talking about are our reptiles. Snakes, lizards, water turtles, alligators, and crocodiles all form part of this list. They are cold-blooded reptiles. They bake in the sun to get warm because they cannot regulate their own body temperature. Most reptiles lay eggs. Crocodiles can bite their prey to death with their sharp teeth, but they cannot chew with it. They swallow stones to help digest food in their stomach. The difference between a crocodile and an alligator can be observed by looking at their jaws. The alligators have a broad, short jaw, while crocodiles have long and pointed jaws. Birds. Birds have something no other animal has: feathers. They fly and steer with the long flight feathers on their tails and wings. Contour feathers give birds their shape, and soft down feathers keep the birds dry and warm. Birds' body temperature is the warmest of all warm-blooded animals. One of our national symbols is the blue crane. It is on the endangered birds list. The blue crane is only found in South Africa, and their numbers are declining due to their environment changing, poisoning, and disturbance of their nests. We should work hard to prevent these birds from becoming extinct. Our next group we will be looking at are amphibians. Amphibians are also cold-blooded vertebrates. They live in the water and move to land when they are adults. For example, frogs. Frogs lay thousands of eggs at a time. Tadpoles then hatch from these eggs. Tadpoles have gills and can breathe underwater. But adult frogs have lungs, but they can also breathe through their skin. People think that frogs and toads are the same animal, but this is not entirely true. Frog's skin is smooth, slimy, and moist. That means a little bit wet, and they always live near water. Toad's skin is dry and rough, and their hind legs are shorter so that they can walk. Let's talk about fish. All fish are vertebrates. Remember, vertebrates are animals with a spine or backbone. Most fish swim by moving their tails back and forth. It pushes them forward into the water. They steer with their fins and also use their fins for balance. All bony fish have a swim bladder in their body that makes them float. It kind of works like your wings in the pool. The galjoen is South Africa's national fish. It is on the red list, which means that it may not be bought or sold. Now we will take a closer look at insects, spiders, and snails. All insects have three body parts: the head, a thorax, which is the chest area, and an abdomen at the back. They have 6 legs and 2 antennae or feelers. An insect skeleton is an exoskeleton. Remember, that means it's on the outside of their body. It is on the outside to protect them from danger. Insects lay eggs, and most develop in 4 stages of life, or metamorphosis. The stages are egg, larva or nymph, a chrysalis, and then an adult. Spiders are not insects, but they are arthropods belonging to the group of arachnoids. Spiders also have 8 legs, which is opposite to the insect's 6 legs. A spider spins its web from silk that is produced in its body and is pushed out by tubes at the bottom of the abdomen. Snails. The most striking feature of a typical garden snail are the spiral shell and muscular foot. Inside the shell is a visceral hump, which contains many of the organs. The body begins at the fleshy head, with 2 pairs of retractable tentacles or feeler horns. Retractable means that they are able to pull their eyes back into their body. The longest pair usually contains the eyes. The foot can reach out of the shell and retract back into it. There is a gland at the foot that secretes a smoothing mucus. Let's discuss the food chain. We will specifically be looking at omnivores, herbivores, carnivores, as well as scavengers and decomposers. Omnivores. Omnivores eat other plants and animals. For example, baboons and humans. We call these animals omnivores. Man is also an omnivore because most of us eat meat and plants or their products. Herbivore. Animals that eat plants to obtain their energy. For example, antelope like buck and horses. We call these animals herbivores. Carnivores. Some animals eat other animals or meat to gain their energy. For example, lions and tigers. We call these animals carnivores. Scavengers and decomposers. We also find special animals called scavengers and decomposers. They eat dead animals and break up their bodies into small particles that enter the soil as compost. These particles must be small enough for plants to be able to absorb them. It is very important for us to realize that animals and plants are interdependent. That means that they need each other and depend on each other to survive. All living plants and animals need food to give them energy in order to survive. Energy is transmitted through sunlight to plants that use it along with a few other things to produce food. This food is utilized by animals, which in turn are eaten by other animals. And when animals and plants die, their carcasses and plant fibers decompose, and the chemicals in it become part of the soil, where plants reabsorb it for regrowth. The remarkable cycle of life. It is not for nothing that conservation-conscious people are so worried when species become extinct, because every time a link disappears from a chain, it can disturb the fragile eternity in nature with catastrophic consequences. Have you ever wondered why there are more herbivores than carnivores in the wild? In the food chain, as we have seen, energy is transferred from one link to another. But with each new link, only a fraction of the food is converted into body mass. The rest of the energy is wasted, partly because the animal needs it to be able to move. So, quite a few antelopes are needed to keep just one lion fed. Here is an example of a food chain. Remember, if one of these are removed from the food chain permanently, the food chain is broken and the others in the food chain are affected. We start off with lettuce. Lettuce grows by extracting water from the soil, as well as energy from the sun that shines on the leaves where nutritious matter is manufactured. It helps the plant to grow. Then the snail eats the lettuce leaf to survive. Along comes the beetle and devours the snail, and then he has enough energy to hunt for the next snail. While he is on the look for the next snail, a rodent eats the beetle. Energy is passed from the lettuce to the snail and then the beetle to the rodent. And finally, an eagle swoops by and snatches the rat, completing the cycle. Once the eagle has reached the end of its lifespan, it will die, its body will decompose, it will break into smaller pieces, and it will be reabsorbed by the earth, allowing new plants to grow. Here is another example of a food chain. The sun shines on the grass, giving it energy. The grasshopper eats the grass, giving the grasshopper energy. Along comes a mouse and eats the grasshopper. The energy has now transferred from the grass to the grasshopper to the mouse. And finally, an owl catches the mouse, completing the food chain. Again, once the owl has reached its lifespan and dies, its body will be broken down by scavengers and decomposers, and it will again form part of the earth. I hope you have learned something new, grade 3s. Enjoy the rest of your day.